Hi, everyone. This is David, and welcome to this week's live stream. We have Safio already with us and ready to get started. We will follow our usual process, which is to begin with a short lesson on a particular topic that has been requested in the past by some of the regular attendees. And then we will take questions on any and every topic, most of which will probably be related to language, the English language in particular. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and make the screen a little bit larger. There we go. And we will talk about this thing right here, the top 10 habits of likable people. You might be asking yourself, why on earth do I need to think about what it means to be likable? I'm here to learn English. I'm here to learn language. Guess what? You are also here to learn to use that language, to use that English to communicate. That's what it's all about. Very few of you, I would guess, are here to learn language just for the sake of learning a language. More than likely, you are here to use it. And that's why we need to talk about this idea of likability and communication. Decker, in his book, You've Got to Be Believed to Be Heard, think about that title, tells us that likability breeds connection. Now, think about how communication takes place. It takes place between two people who have agreed to exchange words. Therefore, the very act of communication implies they are connected. And this connection provides a conduit, a line of transmissibility between two people. The greater the connection, the greater the likelihood of transmission. The less the less connected we are, the more our communication diminishes. And let's look again at the title of Decker's book. You've got to be believed to be heard. In other words, something comes before language. Something comes before the actual act of speaking. What is that something? That something is a connection with someone who wants to be connected to you. This connection can be seen especially clearly in this graphic of the interactive communication process. As you see, both communicator A and communicator B have their own field of experience. And to communicate, the two must agree to share their fields of experience as they come together in the act of communication. That middle overlap there, that is where communication happens. And it can only happen between two consenting people who have come together, who have connected in order to communicate. And therefore, the role of likability is for others to perceive you as someone whom they can trust, someone whom they wish to communicate with. Let's get into this a little bit deeper. Picking up on what we just said about the desire to be with someone, the desire to communicate with another. Likability, as Tim Sanders tells us in his book, The Likability Factor. Likability is the glue that helps people get along. And this getting along means that people have made a conscious decision to listen and to cooperate. And is that ability to listen, it is that willingness to cooperate that is dependent upon, to a large degree, someone's likability. The more likable a person is, the more you're willing to connect with them. The less likable, the less willing, the more reluctant you will be to form that connection that is essential to communication. There's a firm called Talent Smart, headed by Travis Bradberry. And Travis Bradberry is the kind of discoverer of this idea of EQ. EQ, which stands for emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, Talent Smart and Travis Bradberry have shown, is just as important as IQ, intelligence quotient, in terms of communication, in terms of your success as a communicator. And guess what? That 58, and it's also reported as 60% of your success as a communicator is dependent upon your EQ, your emotional quotient. Talent Smart, Travis Bradberry point out that EQ is an essential part of who we are. It is an essential part of the whole person. That person consists of IQ, which is the ability to learn. It consists of personality. Those are your values, your drives, your priorities, your goals, your beliefs, and your EQ. That is your ability to put all of those into action. EQ begins on the personal level with your ability to self-monitor and change yourself in order to facilitate communication. And then it also exists on a social level, your ability to understand and communicate with others. EQ is an essential part of who we are and of our communication. The research done by Talent Smart has found that not only is EQ, your emotional intelligence, responsible for 58% of your performance, it also found that 90% of all top performers in any discipline, in any profession, in any walk of life, and they interviewed, as you saw, over 1 million people, is dependent upon your emotional intelligence. 90% of those people will have emotional intelligence. And then, of course, there's the monetary or pecuniary motive, and that is that people with high emotional intelligence make a heck of a lot more. Let's translate emotional intelligence for us in this lesson, this live stream. Take that money figure there and translate it to anything of value to you. Having a high likability or emotional quotient will bring more of whatever is of value to you. Okay. The MIT journal, I'm sorry, I don't mean to use acronyms. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the top 3 universities in America, publish the Review of Economics and Statistics. And their overall finding when they studied this matter was simply this: intelligence, or IQ, gets you only so far. It's your EQ, emotional intelligence, your ability to upgrade your likability factor and control it, that gets you the rest of the way. Summary from Andrew Thomas, the author of 28 Daily Habits of the Most Likable People. Shall we read it together? Quote, likable people are more successful even though they aren't necessarily as intelligent, skilled, or experienced as others. In other words, EQ, likability, trumps intelligence, skill, and experience. That's a powerful summary and a powerful thought that takes us into the 10 habits of highly likable people that we're going to cover today. The first one is a common technique that is so easy to use and will gain you a lot of likability, and that is simply using people's names. As a kind of teaser for today's live stream, I gave to you a quote from Dale Carnegie, which said, "The sweetest sound in any language is the sound of one's own name." And so, one of the things that you can do to encourage others to connect with you, which we saw is the foundation of communication, one of the things you can do is to use their name. Certainly, you should use their name with every greeting. Instead of just a hello or hi or how are you, it's hello, how are you, Safio? Hi, Safio. Good to see you this morning, Safio. Use the names with every greeting. And then also use the name not obnoxiously after everything you say, but use the name scattered intelligently throughout your conversation with someone. Why do you do that? It provides validation that you are still connected to that person standing in front of you or on the other side of the screen, as it were. It validates their existence. It validates their connection. Now, if you have trouble remembering names, not a problem. Everybody does. Guilty as charged. You develop a system. I try to connect something odd or unusual to a person so that I recall their name. So for Safio, it would be safe. Safio is a safe person to talk to. And it's that idea, and I have an image in my mind of a big safe. And I associate that image with Safio, the person. Who is that person? That is the safe person, the Safio. If I meet a person named Paul, I will connect it with Paul the prophet from the biblical days, the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew Christian Bible. Paul the prophet. And that has a kind of an alliteration, Paul the prophet. And that's how I would remember Paul during that conversation and hopefully even after it. And so I would see in my mind a tall, robed, bearded figure holding the 10 Commandments. And I would associate that very strong mental image of Paul, the prophet, with Paul, the person I'm talking to. Whatever works for you, develop a system that helps you remember names, because just saying you're going to do it is not going to happen. You need a system. Be genuine. Did you know that candor, which means transparency, not being a fake, candor, that means not holding anything back, saying what needs to be said, and your honesty, if you make those your brand, people will always know that they can trust you to be candid, to tell the truth, and to be completely open and honest with them. Make that your brand. Whenever I walk up to you, I should know in the back of my mind, I can trust this person to tell me the truth. And it's that brand that you develop as a candid, honest person that leads to trust. And trust is the absolute glue that holds the communication connection together. Trust. Cannot emphasize enough how important that trust is. Also, something that can enable the sense of I'm talking to a genuine person, I'm talking to the real person, not a fake, is someone who speaks with confidence. This idea of speaking with confidence might be difficult for someone who you might think it to be difficult since you're learning a new language. But confidence isn't about the words that you use. The confidence is about how you carry yourself. Confidence is about your belief in what you are saying. Confidence is about being open, genuine, honest, and unafraid to speak your mind, regardless of how uh, new the language may be to you. Habit number 3, ask thoughtful questions. This is so important. Many people have written about this in the book, the uh, the 12 Habits of the Most Successful People. That author notes that most people, when another person is talking, does not actually listen to that person. Instead, they are thinking of what to say next. They are preparing to reply rather than actually listening and understanding. This is the me next syndrome. And you know when you're with when you're with a me next person, when after you're finished speaking, their reply doesn't necessarily reflect what you just said. In other words, they're not really engaged with the content of your message. And so one surefire way to indicate your connection, your listening, your understanding is to ask questions. Question asking indicates that you are listening and, more importantly, that you're understanding. As you know, you can fake listening, nodding your head, smiling, giving good eye contact, but not necessarily truly take in and understand or pay attention to what somebody else is saying. But if you force yourself to ask questions, and don't be obnoxious about it, ask relevant follow-up questions. If you force yourself to ask questions, you will also force yourself to understand what the other person is saying so that you can ask questions. Finally, asking questions signal that you actually care about what somebody else is saying. How many conversations have you ended prematurely simply because you felt like the other person could not give up hoot, darn, uh, flying fart about what you just said? So, one of your goals, in addition to signaling your understanding, is to signal that you're actually connected to, involved with, and care about what the other person is saying. And it's that signal of caring that will add fuel to the conversation. Number 4, don't judge. Who wants to talk to someone who you feel like is automatically judging you, judging your whatever, judging your intelligence, judging your contribution, judging your status? That is a real conversation ender. Your goal, rather, is to be in an open-minded state. Even if this person holds views that you know are opposite of yours, that you disagree with, still, during a conversation, it's important that you be open-minded. There's an old saying, first understand, then criticize. So your first job in any conversation, even if it's with someone with whom you have disagreements, is nonetheless to listen with an open mind. Also, listening with an open mind indicates empathy. Now, please do not confuse empathy with sympathy. Sympathy is where you actually are on the other person's side, where you offer pity and support and encouragement. That is not what empathy is. Empathy is simply the ability to understand the other person, their thoughts, and their feelings. Empathy does not mean agreeing with them. It simply means putting yourself in a mindset to where you want to understand where that person is coming from, what they're feeling, what psychologically is causing them to say and to believe what they're believing. So, empathy is a form of understanding, not sympathy. And this empathy, this willingness to understand, this willingness to put yourself in somebody else's shoes without judging, lets others be who they are. It The opposite of empathy is judgment. The opposite of judgment is open-minded empathy. And so letting others be who they are is really paving the highway to communication. Still, you reserve the right to disagree in a substantive, considerate way. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about when you're in the act of communicating with someone. Habit number 5, don't seek attention. We all at times want attention. We want people to approve of us. We want people to think we're intelligent. We want people to recognize us. And that is a natural human need. However, the minute you start giving off the vibes that you are in that conversation in order to get attention for yourself, that conversation is going to diminish and eventually shut down because you are focused. A person who does that is focused on themselves, not the other person. So it's important for you to focus on the other person, not on yourself. This goes back to habit number 4, empathy, open-mindedness. Habit number 3, listening without preparing what you're going to say next, asking questions. That focus on the other person validates them and encourages their participation in the conversation. And along the way, be considerate. Never, 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 never interrupt. Sure, it can happen by mistake. I do it all the time. I think someone has finished talking and I start to say something and I realize they haven't. That's not really interrupting. That's more of a simply misreading the cues. But interrupting is where you consciously make an effort to put your ideas and thoughts ahead of others, because that's what interrupting means. It is saying to the other person, what I have to say is more important than what you have to say. And that's the last position that you want to be in. Okay, be consistent. You know people like this. People that you have to walk on eggshells around, people you have to be really careful about, and you kind of first need to judge their mood. Are they in a good mood or a bad mood? Is today a good day for them or a bad day for them? And so that lack of mood reliability is a true hindrance to human relationships. And of course, conversation and language is the glue of human relationships. So the ability to kind of always be in an open mood with others is so important. Now, I'm not talking about your spouse or your significant other. I mean, that's the reason they're there, right? To put up with your moods. I'm talking about in these social relationships in which communication takes place. Think about your communication personae. Your personae, it's a Greek word that means mask. And whenever we are in public, whenever we are engaging in public discourse, we have a mask that we wear. But you have control of what that mask looks like. Is the mask one of empathy, one of anger, one of disapproval? You get to control your mask. So your best bet is to have a consistent mask of openness, a consistent mask of being non-judgmental, a consistent mask of listening and empathy. You control your mask. And by the way, being a consistent person is one of the things that allows others to truly trust you. And as we already have seen, trust is the glue of relationships. Use positive body language. As see in our cartoon here, this figure is doing everything wrong. That person needs to uncross her arms. That is, and now, by the way, a lot of this depends upon your culture, but in by all means, ignore anything I say if it does not fit into your culture. But in most cultures, crossed arms mean a defensiveness and a lack of openness. So she needs to uncross her arms. She needs to maintain eye contact, but not stare. Obviously, this person is staring in a disapproving manner at the other person. So maintain eye contact, but don't be psycho about it. Lean in. She's obviously leaning away. Lean in, but beware of what's called personal space or personal boundaries. And the amount of personal space is dependent upon the culture that you belong to. In our culture in the U.S., personal space is about 3 feet. 3 feet. Anything closer than 3 feet, and you're invading their space. Well, some cultures, and I want you to tell me about your culture. Some cultures have a much wider uh, personal distance boundary. Some cultures have even closer than 3 feet personal boundaries. The Latino and Hispanic cultures are down to like 2 and 3 feet, and they also do a lot of touching as well. So this is very much a cultural thing. So determine the personal space boundaries in the culture in which you're communicating and observe those boundaries. And of course, control your facial expressions. The best expressions whenever you're conversing with someone is a neutral expression or a smile or it indicates acceptance. Obviously, this person here has a strong, very negative facial expression. Number 8, make a strong first impression. Did you know that someone will make their judgment about you in the first 7 seconds of a conversation, and then spend the rest of the time during a conversation in the back of their mind justifying their first impression? So it's very important for you to control that first impression. That's why you want to have that open posture. That's why you want to give a greeting that is appropriate to your culture and use that person's name if appropriate in that culture. And use any honorifics, sir, father, whatever honorifics are coming, learned one, and a genuine smile if it is appropriate in your culture. I think first impressions are also have to do with dress. I didn't put that in here because it's one of the more obvious ones, but certainly you want to observe what dress is appropriate in that particular setting and make sure your dress is sharp, clean, as well as appropriate. Okay, number 9, this is the ability to balance work and relationships. It's great that someone is passionate about their job. It's great that someone is really focused on their work. But that's really only half of your job. The other half of your job is to establish and maintain meaningful social interactions. And this goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this chat, which is that um, social interactions are the kind of glue of our relationships. Communication is is the boundaries, is the engine of social relationships. And uh, whenever we are talking, communicating, we are engaging in a social relationship. So being able to establish meaningful social relationships is very much a part of your job as a human being, as a spouse, as a significant other, as well as an employee. One of the ways of making your social interactions more meaningful is to remember and to bring up past conversations. This bringing up past conversations indicates a shared history with someone. And that shared history, if you remember back to one of our earliest graphics, that shared history becomes a part of the shared experience that is the field where communication takes place. And by all means, never, 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 never engage in gossip. Gossip is inevitably negative, and your role as a conversationalist, as someone who is dedicated to positive, meaningful communication, your goal is to remain positive. Spend your time on positive people. Spend your time on positive thoughts. Spend your time on positive actions that move everything forward, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a study group, whether it's a class, whether it's a work related task. Your job is to move it forward, and gossip moves it backwards. Okay, number 10, of course, is to bring it all together. And your goal in bringing it all together is to promote harmony. If you are seen as a figure of harmony, and this, of course, Ein Ang, Yin Yang symbol is from the book of Tao, and the Tao is the way. And the way to advance your language, the way to advance your communication is for you to be seen as someone who is interested in promoting harmony, and for you to be seen as someone who can be relied upon to stay positive and to always stay focused on moving ahead in a harmonious way. Okay, well, that pretty much kind of sums up what I was wanted to say. And let's see who we have joining us. We have Kriti. Kriti, I hope that I am saying your name right. Please share where you are from. Safio, I believe, is living in Sweden currently. And of course, Kriti, I would love to know what languages you speak, as well as, oh, excuse me, I'm trying to readjust here. There we go. What languages you speak, as well as what you're currently studying, and all those kinds of things, so that we can get to know each other better. And I can perhaps possibly help you more. Okay, so now we are open to questions. Questions about what was just presented. And you're welcome, Kriti. Questions about what was just presented, but of course, any other questions that you have. By the way, Safio, I noticed that part of your last name is Rahim, Abdel Rahim. Um, my sister-in-law married a Palestinian, and uh, Sam's last name is Rahim. So we share uh, that together. Okay, waiting for your questions. I'll bring us back to the start here. Questions about today's presentation, as well as any questions that you have about the English language, about writing, or anything else that I can help you with. Oh, Brandon, hello. I didn't know you were here. Brandon asked, let me put your question up, Brandon. It's a good one. Does offering constructive feedback count as judgment? Yes and no, depending upon how that constructive feedback is offered. If that constructive feedback can be offered in a non-judgmental way. How do you offer constructive feedback in a non-judgmental way? By avoiding use of the word you. In other words, putting the emphasis on the behavior or the product rather than the human being. So you would say things like, instead of, you made a mistake here, you would say, I was confused when. So you would use I language, and you would keep the emphasis on whatever it is you're talking about, not the person. Thank you for the question. It's a good one. Do you have any particular situations, Brandon, in which you have encountered this that we can perhaps use as an example? But those would be my two recommendations. Use the language of I, not the language of you, and keep the focus on the thing, not the person. Oh, a good way to summarize this. How you say something is as important, if not more important, than what you say. I think as students of language, you have already learned that. Okay, other questions or more discussion about that? Safio, Kriti, how do you give constructive feedback without being judgmental? Being judgmental is one of my weak points. Because I've been a teacher for 30 years, and because I've been involved in the act of grading and critiquing student work for 30 years, my default position is to judge, to make an evaluation. And it drives my wife crazy. And also I think other people at times in my social interactions can feel kind of intimidated by me. And I think it's because uh, I tend to listen really, uh, not judgmentally, but in a way that gives off that I'm evaluating them or something. It's an occupational hazard. I'm just killing time until the next question, by the way. Brandon, do you have any thoughts on our top 10 habits of highly likable people? You already are displaying one of those 10 habits, asking questions. Well, I think we are probably very busy with the holidays. And if if you don't have any more questions, I will go ahead and um, sign off, and this will become a video as soon as I end the broadcast. Oh, here we go, Susan Dixon. I find most peer feedback not very useful because of the you I word, your thoughts. I have the same feeling, Susan, about peer feedback. I really don't know why it's used in school, especially. I don't know if you're referring to a work situation in peer feedback or a school situation, but in a school situation, most students are highly reluctant to, quote, criticize other students in front of a teacher. And so that's one of the real drawbacks. In order for peer feedback to be meaningful, I think that a system has to be developed. In other words, it helps if the feedback is anonymous. It helps sometimes if the feedback is one on one instead of in a group. Some other recommendations for peer feedback. It really helps if there is a list of questions to respond to, as opposed to something like, just give me your feedback. You're probably going to get only generalities unless you have specific questions that you want answered. So I hope that helps, Susan. I put on my glasses. I think Susan is. I'm trying to figure out what puppet that is in your avatar. But thank you for that question. Okay, and thank you for agreeing, Susan. It sounds like that you have not had very positive, useful experiences with peer feedback. One other thing I will say about peer feedback, peer feedback, ties into what I was saying earlier about candor, which is the ability and willingness to be honest and transparent. And one of the ways that we can develop a reputation for candor is to give honest, full, unflinching feedback of positive things as well as areas of improvement. We all have areas of improvement in every facet of our life. Today, you could probably tell me 5 things that I could do better as a host of a live stream. And that would be wonderful feedback. I would relish that. Feedback should be seen as a gift, not as a burden. Because someone is taking the time to show an interest in you and what you do. That should be celebrated as a gift and should be received as a gift. You're welcome to use some parts of a feedback and disregard other parts, but still the package itself is a gift. Okay, what else? Thank you for your questions. Well, any suggestions for next week's live stream? Anything in particular that you would like me to cover? Now that I've got some time, my classes ended earlier this week. I want to really do some sound research and preparation for writing a research proposal. So that's one of the things I'm interested in presenting in a live stream. Susan writes, I love learning platforms such as Coursera. Yeah. For those who are on the chat and don't know, Coursera is, I believe, a free learning platform. And others, but find that most peer feedback presented in negative ways, absolutely, actually halts the learning process. That is exactly right. How can you, Susan asked, how can we help change that? The first way that comes to mind, Susan, is to be a model of how to offer peer feedback in a positive, helpful way, as while being fully candid, to be a model of it. The other way is if you are the teacher. I don't know if you are the teacher here or if you are the student in your Coursera courses. If you're the teacher, there are many things that you can do. As a student, I think just being a model is about your best option. But if you are the teacher, Susan, we can certainly talk about particular techniques that can be employed, pedagogies, if you will, in the classroom. First has to come an atmosphere of trust. Many teachers, and I do this as well, like to do some warm-up activities, some pre-feedback activities that, whether they be games or other kinds of non-judgmental interactions that kind of engender a sense of social connectedness and trust among the members. So whether you call them warm-up activities, icebreakers, trust builders, whatever you want to call them, they definitely have a place. If you're the teacher, inviting students to give you feedback helps you serve as a model of how to receive feedback and what to do with it. In other words, if you're a teacher and after you have finished a lecture, give them a quick survey that allows them to give you feedback. Oh, okay. You are the student. Susan, you sound like someone who is quite aware of the importance of maintaining that circle of trust when it comes to peer interactions. And it sounds like you're someone who is quite sensitive to other people and the impact that your words might have upon them. Exactly, Susan. Exactly. Let me put that up. That is so important. Instead of focusing on the you should do this or you should not do this. That's the correlative of should. Simply saying everything in the I point of view. I got confused when you. I felt like I didn't fully understand that sentence. I was unable to really pinpoint a thesis statement. Um, I felt that some of the vocabulary was perhaps too informal because it made me think of just kind of dwell upon the I, because that's really the essence of feedback. You want to know how someone else reacted. Getting feedback is not asking for judgment. Getting feedback is asking for someone else's honest reactions as a reader or as a viewer. And that's what you want to know. I think that's a good distinction. And I think I'm thinking that for the first time, Susan, thanks to you, is we really should make a distinction between critique and feedback. Critique implies an evaluation. Feedback is simply giving someone your honest responses, no matter what they were, in I language. Thank you for helping me realize that, Susan. Oh, and using I language will also make you more likable to kind of bring things full circle today. Well, I think I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. Here we go. Susan says, perhaps is a good word to use, leaves it open. Yes, yeah, I think you're responding to this feedback as opposed to critique. Yeah, I agree with you. Feedback is just, I want your honest reactions, no matter what they are, your reactions. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Susan, maybe you should think about being a teacher. You have some good instincts as a teacher here. I don't know what your major is, but whatever it is, think about getting an advanced degree so that you can teach it. Okay, well, it's getting to the top of the hour. I will go ahead and end the broadcast. Feel free to follow up with me on my channel or via email. Happy to interact with you more on this topic and any other. You guys have a great holiday if you are celebrating the holidays. And I look forward to seeing you again in our next live stream. Talk to you later.